The guilty verdict against Donald Trump comes on all 34 felony counts against him. The jury delivered its verdict on the second day of deliberations. It seemed like they were going to go into a third day. Trump convicted of falsifying business records, covering up the Stormy Daniels affair, and intending to have an influence on the 2016 election. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg said he is proud of the way this played out.
While this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors.
As Trump has been saying for the past month or so, he claims the entire process has been rigged against him.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. We didn't do a thing wrong.
Jeremy Saland is back with us, criminal defense attorney, former Manhattan assistant district attorney. Duncan Levin with us in studio as well, former federal prosecutor in the Eastern District of New York. Thank you both for all the time that you've spent helping us to analyze this and understand this. Jeremy, I'd like to begin with you as you look at the way this case was prosecuted and the way this case was defended. What went right, what went wrong?
Before I say that, I want you to know that Duncan and I were office mates in Manhattan, and we had a friendly wager that we'd have a verdict by 2:15 or after 2:15 on Thursday. I won that wager. That being said, not to keep it like this, you know, we're still friends. But you know, I think that the prosecution did a heck of a job, and they were incredibly thorough. And at times, you would have said, 4 hours, 5 hours plus on a summation, you're losing your jury. But clearly he did what he needed to do, and he hit all his points, because we know when the jury wanted to read back, they went back to some of the most critical pieces that corroborated Michael Cohen and the story. I thought they did a fabulous job. And all along, the evidence went in really, really well. I thought the defense was a little meandering, and at times a lot of meandering. I didn't think the cross-examination, we discussed this previously with Stormy Daniels, was 2024. It was more pre-2000s type of a cross-examination.
One of the things I heard was why not just admit that something happened with Stormy Daniels rather than trying to muddy that up?
Well, they were trying the case not to the jury, but really to the public and to their client. And there were a lot of instances like that, not only denying the sexual affair with Stormy Daniels, but denying that this was even a reimbursement to Michael Cohen. They said, no, this was for legitimate legal services. And there were all these instances where it really seemed that they were just catering to their client and to this public notion about this sexual encounter with Stormy Daniels never happened, and they didn't really admit the things that they couldn't deny, and they should have argued a much more narrow case to the jury, and that's probably ultimately the failing at the end of the day.
I think they let Donald Trump sort of dictate that defense, as opposed to the defense attorney dictating and saying, I'm the defense attorney, it's my job, not yours.
Exactly.
I have a question I think everyone at home wants the answer to, and I want to hear from both of you in one word. Will Donald Trump go to jail?
One word? That's not fair. No, that's my one
No,
word.
Do you think he will?
One word.
Maybe.
Another wager?
Jeremy, you get more than one word now. Why do you think that?
I think just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think that if you believe the theory of the case and the jury convicted for the reasons, not just falsifying business records, but impacting the election, on its face, he should go to prison. But there's also another consideration, and that other consideration is no one should be gloating or be happy. This is an incredibly horrible day for our nation, and healing and fixing and moving forward is far better than dividing further and the collateral ripple effects of a former and potential future president being incarcerated. Bigger picture.
It's an e-felony. It's a low-level felony case. It's a first-time offender, but he violated the gag order 10 times. He's been found in criminal contempt. He's been undermining the judge. He's been threatening the court staff and the prosecutors. And if there's any e-felony that calls out for some jail time, it is this one.
If it's not jail time, what is it? Is he picking up garbage on community service?
There's a lot of, on the judge's menu of options. There could be a conditional discharge, which has certain conditions. There's probation, there's jail, and there's also home confinement. And so it's unlikely to wind up with a major incarceratory sentence, but the judge has unilateral power to really impose any number of those things.
Talk to me about the importance of courtroom experience. Trump's lead lawyer here is not someone who has he's an experienced lawyer. He's not a criminal defense attorney that works in a courtroom.
I mean, to a certain extent, I've referenced before the movie Hoosiers. It's still 10 feet to the basketball, hoop. In other words, whatever court you're in, it's the court's a court's a court. But federal court is different than state court, and being a criminal defense attorney is quite different than being a prosecutor. Having both of us wearing both hats, it's one thing to say what happened next and what happened next. It's another thing to say, poke out and leading questions. It's much more difficult. And that really showed at this trial.
And then, Duncan, we're not done yet. He has 3 other trials from here.
Well, the timing is unclear whether any of those obviously are not going to come before the election,
right.
But this was considered widely to be sort of the weakest of all the cases against him. And I think he's going to have a mountain of other legal problems. If he wins the presidency, obviously he's going to pardon himself in those 2 federal cases, but he's still got the case in Georgia to contend with, and he's not able to pardon himself in the New York case.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about avenues for an appeal. Of course, there will be an appeal. I don't know whether it be this lawyers or other lawyers that are filing that appeal. They have to indicate to the court what was done wrong at trial. That Donald Trump doesn't agree with the verdict is not grounds for an appeal.
I 100%, although I'm sure that'll be part of it. I think they're going to look and try to dig things up on the jury even after the fact. But that aside, one of the angles is going to be what we've heard repeatedly about falsifying business records, about this sort of bootstrapping it to a potential federal election fraud or crime. Not necessarily making them follow a specific route and say this is the crime that we're choosing and this is the reason why we're pursuing it, though they don't have to. We've discussed that many times. So I think it's going to be related to that second felony elevation piece of the falsifying business records. Whether it's going to be meritorious is yet to be seen, but that's got to be their strongest angle.
Final thought on that is process?
I would expect to see him throw his lawyers under the bus as well and try to argue ineffective assistance of counsel, not objecting during all of that Stormy Daniels testimony, and I think you're going to see him have his appeal really cater to the public. I didn't get a fair trial. The jury pool in New York is tainted, and they all hate me.
We appreciate the legal insight from both of you this morning. You're both doing all right. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.